She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "It's not cheating if we're not married yet." That sentence still echoes in my mind like a bad dream I can't wake up from. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just smiled. Because right then and there, I made a decision, not the kind of decision people expect when they hear about betrayal, but one that required patience and a little bit of quiet revenge. We'd been together for 4 years. Through college, through internships, through long distance and late night fights, and everything in between. I thought we had built something real. She was the woman I wanted to spend my life with. And when I proposed on the cliffs of Big Sur, with a ring I spent months saving for, she cried tears of joy. Or at least, that's what I thought they were. Turns out, some people are just good at pretending. Everything seemed perfect, at least from the outside. We had the Instagram-worthy engagement shoot, her Pinterest dream wedding was becoming a reality, and her parents were footing most of the bill. They adored me, thought of me as the son they never had. And I played the part. I showed up, smiled for every photo, nodded along to every conversation about flowers and color palettes, and acted like I was the happiest man alive. All the while, I held on to a truth that was slowly eating me from the inside. I found out about what happened at her bachelorette party a week after it ended. Not through some drunk confession or shady text. No. It came from a friend of hers, someone who was too decent to let a lie fester. She didn't mean to spill it. She thought I already knew. Her exact words were, "I can't believe you're still okay," with her hooking up with her ex that night. And just like that, my stomach dropped. At first, I thought she was messing with me. A bad joke. But then I saw the look in her eyes. That look of instant regret, like someone realizing they just said something they shouldn't have. I walked away before she could backtrack or apologize. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the years I'd invested, the trust one gave so freely, and the woman who shattered it like it meant nothing. I confronted her the next day, not about the cheating, but casually like I was asking about the party. She played it cool, told me it was just some dancing, lots of drinks, and funny stories. I nodded. That was all I needed to hear. I wanted to give her a chance to come clean. She didn't. So I stayed silent. Because I wasn't about to fight over someone who didn't even value honesty. From that moment on, I played the long game. I let her parents pay for the wedding. Every overpriced appetizer, every imported flower arrangement, every custom napkin with our initials. I acted excited when she showed me the dress. I complimented her taste. I showed up for the food tastings, the venue walkthroughs, and even the engagement dinner her father threw at his golf club. And through it all, I smiled. Because deep down, I knew something she didn't. I wasn't going to marry her. Not because I was bitter. Not because I wanted to make a scene. But because she needed to feel the weight of what she did. And what better way to deliver that than letting everything build up? The hope, the excitement, the fantasy of the perfect wedding, and then shatter it in one clean moment. I rehearsed it in my mind for weeks. What I would say, how I would say it, what my face would look like when the officiant turned to me and asked that all-important question. And when the day came, I was calm. I walked down the aisle, shook hands, hugged relatives, posed for pictures, and even told her she looked beautiful. Because she did. On the outside, anyway. And then the moment arrived. The music stopped. The guests fell silent. The officiant smiled, looked at me, and said the words, "Do you take this woman as your lawfully wedded wife?" Everyone turned to me. Her eyes were locked on mine, full of love, or at least what she wanted me to believe was love. And in that second, everything slowed down. The room blurred. The flowers faded. And all I could hear was her voice from weeks ago, that smug sentence she said like it meant nothing. "It's not cheating if we're not married yet." And that's when I opened my mouth, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, "I'm sorry. I can't," I said softly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The words hung in the air like smoke after fire. There was this strange, heavy silence that fell over the crowd, like no one was sure they actually heard what they thought they heard. Her expression froze. She blinked. Once. Twice. Then her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The officiant looked between us, confused, probably wondering if this was some joke, a prank, or a moment of stage fright. But I didn't waver. I looked straight ahead and said it again, clearer this time. I can't marry you. That's where the whisper started. Her mom gasped. Her dad stood up, already red in the face. I didn't even turn to look at them. My eyes stayed on her, because this moment was between her and me. This wasn't about revenge for the guests or a dramatic stunt for attention. This was the answer to her choices. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand who we were before all this. Why this moment wasn't just impulsive rage or hurt pride. We weren't one of those couples who met in some perfect rom-com setting. We met in a coffee shop, literally. She spilled her drink all over my laptop and we both laughed. I didn't know it then, but that laugh would be the start of 4 years of memories, love, trust, and eventually betrayal. She was the kind of person who made everything feel exciting. The kind who could walk into a room and instantly be the center of it without even trying. She wasn't just beautiful, she was magnetic. People liked being around her. I liked being around her. At first, it felt like we were two puzzle pieces that fit exactly right. We talked about everything: careers, childhood dreams, how many kids we wanted, and even what songs we'd dance to at our wedding one day. That's the kind of love it felt like. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe I believed in the version of her that I wanted to be real, not the one that actually existed. Looking back, there were signs. Moments when things didn't add up. Conversations where she'd suddenly change the subject. Times she went quiet when certain names were mentioned. But I told myself not to overthink it. I trusted her, because I loved her. The bachelorette party was in Miami. Classic, right? A group of her college friends, some of whom I barely knew, rented a beach house and went all out for 3 days. I didn't think much of it. Why would I? We were a week away from saying I do. I assumed she was just out having fun, maybe drinking too much and posting silly selfies with inflatable rings or glittery sashes. Typical pre-wedding stuff. What I didn't know was that her ex from college, someone she claimed she hadn't spoken to in years, happened to be in town. And according to her friend who slipped up, he didn't just happen to be there. She invited him. That's what hit me hardest. Not just the betrayal of the act itself, but the planning behind it. The conscious choice to lie. To go behind my back and risk everything we had for one night with someone who was supposed to be part of her past. And then to justify it, to laugh it off like it was some technicality. That's when I realized she didn't see our relationship the same way I did. To her, we weren't committed until paperwork was signed. To me, commitment began the moment I asked her to be mine, and she said yes. So no, I didn't yell. I didn't tell her I knew. I didn't expose her in front of everyone before the wedding. Because I wanted her to think she got away with it. I wanted her to feel secure, to think I was clueless, that everything was going as planned. I watched her glow in bridal fittings, gush over centerpieces, and stress about last-minute changes, all while I stayed calm, because I knew the truth. I knew I wouldn't be standing at that altar forever. As I stood there after saying, I can't, I saw her eyes fill with panic. She whispered, "What are you doing?" like it was a misunderstanding I could undo. But I didn't say anything else. I just turned and walked away. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just steady. Because this wasn't about making a scene. It was about finally doing what I should have done the moment she crossed that line. And behind me, I could hear the sound of confusion turn into chaos. Her dad calling my name, her mom crying, the bridal party frozen in shock. But none of it mattered. Not anymore. Because this story wasn't about them. It was about a man who loved too deeply and a woman who thought love had conditions. It was about choices, consequences, and the quiet power of walking away when staying would cost you your self-respect. But if you think that's the end, you're wrong. Because the fallout that followed, that's where things really got messy. I didn't look back, not even once. I walked out of that wedding hall with every pair of eyes burning into my back, every whispered question chasing me down the aisle. But nothing felt heavier than the silence that followed once I stepped outside. The warm afternoon sun hit me like a spotlight, and for a second, I just stood there, breathing. It was over. At least, the part where I pretended everything was fine. But deep down, I knew the real storm was just beginning. By the time I got to my car, my phone had already blown up. Her name flashed over and over. Missed calls, voicemails, texts that started off confused, then desperate, then angry. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because anything I said in that moment would have come out raw, and I didn't want to give her that power anymore. Instead, I drove. No destination. No plan. Just miles of road, and thoughts unraveling inside my head. I thought I'd feel free. Relieved. Like I escaped something toxic before it swallowed me whole. But that's not how it felt. I felt everything all at once. Betrayal, sadness, rage, and something worse. Disappointment. Not just in her, but in myself. For missing the signs. For loving someone who didn't deserve it. For giving everything to someone who had no idea what loyalty really meant. Later that night, I ended up at my brother's place. He was the only one who knew the full story before the wedding. I told him the truth weeks earlier, after I found out. He offered to confront her himself, even told me to cancel the wedding right then and there. But I wasn't ready. I needed time to think. He never pushed, but I could see in his eyes that he was just waiting for the crash to happen. And when I showed up at his door, still wearing my half-wrinkled tux, he didn't say anything. He just opened the door and let me in. Meanwhile, things on her side were exploding. Her parents were furious. Not at her, but at me. They had no idea what she did. All they saw was a man walk out on their daughter at the altar in front of friends, family, and a very expensive wedding planner. Her mom left voicemails, so long they got cut off. Her dad demanded a meeting like men, saying I owed them an explanation. But I didn't owe them anything. They were kind to me, sure. Generous, even. But they didn't know the truth. They didn't know who their daughter really was behind all that charm. The hardest part, though, wasn't dealing with the backlash. It was the quiet in between. The long hours of sitting with the memories. Remembering the little things, her laugh when she got too excited about a movie, how she used to wear my hoodies around the apartment, the way she'd squeeze my hand twice when she didn't want to say, "I love you," out loud. Those were the moments that hurt the most. Because even after what she did, part of me still missed the version of her I once believed in. And then the messages started showing up online. Someone from the wedding posted a video, just a short clip, but enough. Me standing there, then shaking my head and walking away. It went viral on a local wedding group. The caption was something like, "Groom leaves bride at altar." No explanation. Of course, no one knew the real story. So the comments came fast, people assuming I had cold feet, that I humiliated her for fun, that I must be some selfish guy with commitment issues. She didn't post anything, not right away. But her best friend did. A long, dramatic post defending her. Saying I blindsided her. That I never explained why. That she was left heartbroken with no answers. And suddenly, the sympathy poured in for her. Old classmates, co-workers, strangers, all jumping in to say how no one deserves that, and men are trash, and how could he do this to such a sweet girl? I didn't respond. I didn't want to be dragged into a public argument. But it made my blood boil. She knew exactly what she did. She was just hoping I'd stay quiet. That I'd vanish and let the world see her as the victim. But I wasn't going to stay silent forever. I was just waiting for the right moment. Meanwhile, I found out something else. Her ex, the one from the bachelorette party, had been texting her even after the wedding was canceled. I only knew because one of her friends, maybe feeling guilty, maybe just sick of the lies, sent me screenshots. They weren't just harmless messages. They were talking about how everything worked out in the end, how maybe they were meant to find their way back. She had moved on fast, almost like she was never really mine to begin with. That stung more than I thought it would. Because even though I'd walked away, I think a part of me hoped she'd chase me. Not for ego, but to show that she regretted it. That she saw what she lost. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned into the story that made her look innocent. And suddenly, I realized this wasn't just about one betrayal. It was about a pattern. A history of choices where she always did what served her best and left others to clean up the mess. And I wasn't going to be part of that anymore. Still, part of me wondered, how long had she been this way? Had I ever really known her? Or was I just another person caught up in the version of her she wanted the world to see? I didn't have the answers. Not yet. But I was starting to understand one thing clearly. This story wasn't over. Not even close. I spent the next few weeks keeping my head down while everything around me turned into chaos. People started choosing sides, even though most didn't know the truth. I was suddenly the guy who ran away from a perfect woman while she played the wounded bride with a shaky voice and tear-filled stories. Her friends spread their version. Some mutuals stopped replying to my texts. Even people I barely knew started unfollowing me, as if breaking off a wedding made me contagious. And still I said nothing. But silence is powerful. The more I stayed quiet, the more curious people got. And when curiosity builds long enough, the truth always starts to seep out. It began with whispers. A friend of hers told someone she trusted too much. Someone who didn't like being lied to. That person messaged me one night out of the blue. No greetings. Just one line. You were right to walk away. She told us about the ex. She just never thought you'd find out. I stared at that message for a long time. It confirmed what I already knew, but seeing it written out by someone else, that hit differently. She had lied to everyone. Not just to me, but to her family, her friends, even to herself. And the worst part? She thought she was untouchable. She believed she could lie her way into a perfect wedding, pretend nothing happened, and come out looking like the victim. That's when I knew I needed to say something. Not for her. Not to shame her or ruin her life. But for me. To take back my side of the story. Because people were believing a version of events that wasn't true. And I was done being silent. I wrote a simple post. No drama. No questions. Just the facts. I said I loved someone deeply, but I found out she had been unfaithful before our wedding. I didn't name names or go into ugly details. I just told the truth, that I walked away to protect my peace, not to hurt anyone. That I didn't confront her publicly out of respect, for her family, and for the years we shared. I ended the post by saying I wasn't asking for pity or support, just understanding. And that changed everything. The responses came flooding in. Some apologized for judging me too quickly. Others shared their own stories, people who stayed quiet when they were betrayed, who let themselves be painted as the villain to protect someone else. My story wasn't unique. That's what I learned. But what was unique was how I handled it. At least that's what people kept saying. Of course, not everyone believed me. Some of her close friends doubled down, called me a liar, claimed I was making it up because I couldn't handle commitment. But the truth was already out. And once that door opened, more people started coming forward. Quiet messages, screenshots, stories. People who had seen the way she flirted behind my back. People who knew about the ex before I did but stayed silent out of fear or loyalty. And then something unexpected happened. Her ex reached out. I didn't know whether to laugh or get angry. The message was short and smug. You should have known. She's always been like this. That was it. No epaledi. No explanation. Just those cold words like he was proud of what happened. Like he thought he won. But this wasn't a competition. This wasn't about who got the girl. This was about truth. About the years I spent building something real, only to find out I was the only one doing the work. After that, I started noticing something strange. She went quiet. No more posts. No more comments. Even her friends stopped defending her online. It was like the air got sucked out of their version of the story. And in that silence, something shifted. I found out through a mutual friend that her parents had confronted her. Finally, someone had shown them my post, and then someone else filled in the blanks. Her dad apparently lost it. Not because of the public embarrassment, but because she let him believe I was the problem. Her mom was more hurt than angry. She had called me the son she never had, and now she realized she never really knew her daughter. But here's where things got really complicated. She reached out again. A long, emotional email. Pages of explanations, half apologies, and carefully chosen words. She admitted to messing up, but not to everything. She said she was scared. Said she didn't know how to tell me the truth. That it didn't mean anything. That the ex was just a mistake, and I was the one she wanted to spend her life with. She said she hoped I could still see a future, even after everything. And for a second, I froze. Because this was the moment. The moment when everything I held inside finally came face to face with her reality. This wasn't just a decision about us anymore. It was about who I wanted to be after all this. Whether I'd let her shape my future again, or whether I'd finally take the reins and write my own ending. So I didn't answer right away. I needed time. Not to forgive her, but to figure out what came next. Because part of me still wanted closure. Not revenge. Not chaos. Just the truth. And maybe, finally, peace. But what I didn't expect was what she would do next. The next few days passed like I was walking through fog. I barely ate, barely slept, and kept replaying her words over and over. I think I might be pregnant. I didn't tell anyone. Not my brother. Not my closest friends. I didn't even open up to my parents. I needed space to think without the noise of opinions. I didn't know if I was about to become a father, or if I was being manipulated one last time by someone who had already shattered every bit of trust one had left. She sent another message the next day. This time it had a picture attached, a pregnancy test. Positive. 2 bold lines. She said she'd gone to the clinic to confirm, and it was real. But what she didn't say, what I couldn't stop thinking about, was the one question hanging between us like a ticking clock. Was the baby mine? I asked her directly. She hesitated, then typed. I don't know. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart thudding like a drum in my chest. That one line somehow hurt more than all the lies that came before it. Because this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was a consequence. A living, breathing possibility that I couldn't ignore. And the worst part? She didn't even sound sorry about not knowing. Still, something inside me clicked. I couldn't keep drowning in her chaos. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I told her I wanted a paternity test the moment it was medically safe to do one. She agreed. There wasn't much else to say. But here's where things started to shift. In the middle of this emotional wreckage, I started piecing things together, connecting dots I hadn't seen before. That anonymous message with the screenshots, it had come from a throwaway email. But I recognized something in the way it was worded. A phrase I'd heard before. I started digging. Quietly. I found out the message hadn't come from a stranger at all. It had come from someone much closer. One of her friends. A bridesmaid, actually. Someone who had seen everything unfold, but didn't want to be caught in the middle. She was the one who had passed me the evidence, pushed me toward the truth, and stayed quiet in the background. But what I didn't expect was why. She reached out to me again, anonymously at first. Then one day, she slipped up. She liked to comment on my post from a fake account. And I recognized the user handle. It was the same one she used for a private playlist she once shared with my ex. That's when I realized she hadn't just sent the messages because she wanted justice. She'd done it because she was in love with her. I confronted her directly. I asked her to meet in person. She agreed. And when we sat down in that quiet coffee shop, away from everyone, she told me everything. She had been in love with her for years. Back in college, they were roommates. There had been something between them once, a short fling that ended before it ever had a name. My ex never told me about it, probably because it didn't fit her perfect narrative. But her friend, this bridesmaid, had never really let go. When she found out about the cheating about the ex, she said she couldn't keep watching her lie to everyone, especially me. She didn't do it to hurt her. She did it because she wanted her to be better, to stop pretending. And part of her, maybe a small, quiet part, hoped that once it all came out, my ex would finally stop hiding who she really was. It was a different kind of betrayal. Not romantic, but emotional. Another layer to a story already filled with lies and secrets. After that conversation, I felt a strange kind of peace settle in. I was never supposed to marry her. I see that now. I was never the one she truly wanted, not in the way I needed to be wanted. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the one who could ever give her the life she was chasing because even she didn't know what that life looked like. Weeks passed. We finally did the paternity test. It came back negative. The baby wasn't mine. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel anger. I just felt done. Like the last piece of the puzzle had finally snapped into place, and there was nothing left to wonder about. No more what-ifs. No more second-guessing. She tried calling again after that. I didn't answer. Not because I was bitter, but because I was free. Free from the lies, the confusion, the fake smiles, and forced conversations. Free from the version of myself that was too afraid to walk away when I should have. But just when I thought the story was over, something else happened. I got an email a few weeks later. It was from her father. Short and to the point. I wanted you to know, she moved away. We haven't heard from her in a month. No calls, no messages. We don't know where she went. If you hear anything, please tell us. And just like that, she vanished. The girl who once stood in front of me in a white dress, smiling like the future was ours, disappeared like a ghost in the wind. And I never heard from her again. I stared at her father's email for a long time, reading it over and over. She was gone. No one had seen her. No messages. No posts. No trail. It was like she'd just vanished. And somehow I wasn't surprised. Not really. Running was the one thing she'd always done well, running from consequences, from accountability, from herself. When everything caught up to her, she didn't face it. She disappeared. I never replied to her dad. What was I supposed to say? That I was sorry she left them behind too? That the woman they thought they knew had turned out to be someone completely different? They were grieving a version of her that, honestly, never really existed. Just like I had. And maybe that was the hardest part for all of us, letting go of the person we imagined she was. For a while, the silence felt heavy. But eventually it became something else. A kind of peace. I started focusing on my life again. I moved out of the apartment we had picked together and into a smaller place closer to my office. I threw away the wedding invitations that had been sitting in a sealed box at the back of my closet. I canceled the storage unit where we'd kept the decor and backup venue items. It felt good. Like clearing space not just in my home, but in my heart. The people who really mattered, the ones who waited until they heard my side, slowly came back around. My brother helped me fix up the new place. My parents invited me to dinner more often. A few close friends stayed in touch consistently, never asking too many questions, just making sure I wasn't alone. And for a while, I wasn't looking to meet anyone new or rush into another relationship. I needed time. Time to understand that what happened wasn't my fault. That being lied to didn't make me weak. That walking away wasn't failure, it was strength. I kept in touch with the bridesmaid, the one who had sent me the truth when no one else would. We only met once more after that for coffee just to talk. She told me she hadn't heard from her either. She didn't even know if she'd ever see her again. But she said something that stuck with me, something I think about even now. She was always chasing something, she said, staring out the window. But I don't think she even knew what it was. That was the tragedy of it all. My ex wasn't evil. She was lost. Caught up in a web of lies and half-truths she spun so tightly around herself that she couldn't breathe. Maybe she left because she finally saw what she'd become. Or maybe she ran because it was easier than facing the people she hurt. I'll never know for sure. What I do know is this: betrayal doesn't end with heartbreak. It lingers. It makes you question everything, your instincts, your judgment, your ability to trust again. But healing isn't about erasing the pain. It's about learning from it. And slowly I did. 1 year later, I got invited to a friend's wedding. I almost didn't go. The idea of standing in another venue, watching another couple say vows, brought up more than I wanted to deal with. But I went. And I'm glad I did. It reminded me that love, real love, isn't perfect, but it's honest. It doesn't hide things in shadows or build foundations on lies. It grows slowly, patiently, with openness and care. And I deserved that. Maybe that's the biggest takeaway I want to leave behind in this story. If you've been through something like this, if you've been betrayed or left behind, you're not broken. You're not unlovable. You're not the villain in someone else's fantasy. Sometimes people make choices that say everything about who they are and nothing about your worth. Sometimes letting someone walk away or walking away yourself is the bravest thing you can do. And sometimes the best kind of closure is knowing that you didn't stay silent, that you didn't sink to their level, that you didn't beg for love that wasn't real. As for her, I don't think she'll ever come back. Not to me, not to anyone from her old life. And if she does, maybe she'll have changed. Maybe she'll finally know what she's looking for. Or maybe she won't. Either way, I'm not waiting around to find out. That chapter of my life is closed. Not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with a quiet kind of strength that only comes from walking through fire and still choosing to rebuild. I've got my peace now, and that's more valuable than any promise made under false love. So yeah, she said, it's not cheating if we're not married yet. But I said, it's not love if you're not honest. And I meant it.